I may have the mouth of prattling jackanapes, but my eyes, they tell a different story. Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time I am doing the Caves of Androzani, the last story of Peter Davison's era. So, as always, I have in front of me here the television companion, and I'm going to read out the synopsis to the story. The TARDIS arrives on Androzani Minor, the source of a life-prolonging drug refined from a substance called Spectrox. Production of the drug is controlled by Sharaj Jek, a facially deformed madman in self-imposed exile, who blames Morgus, a powerful industrialist, on Androzani Major for all his misfortunes. Jek is fighting government troops sent to liberate the drug. His weaponry is being supplied by gunrunners, secretly employed by Morgus, who receives payment from Jek in refined Spectrox. This gives Morgus a monopoly of the drug on Major. Jek becomes infatuated with Peri and saves her and the Doctor from being executed on Morgus's orders by government troops led by General Chelak. The two travellers escape after learning that they have contracted Spectrox toxemia, a fatal condition to which there is only one antidote, the milk from a queen bat, which the Doctor must obtain from the deep caves on Minor. Morgus, seeing his power base slipping away, travels to Minor. In a climactic battle, Morgus, Jek and all the other soldiers are killed. With moments to spare, the Doctor carries Peri back to the TARDIS, where he gives her all the milk that he's managed to collect. She recovers, but the Doctor has to regenerate to save his own life. Now, this story is held in high regard in Doctor Who circles, and quite rightly too. It's certainly a change to what we've had in the previous few stories and the way Doctor Who was made at the time. There's a lot more single camera work going on. It's pacey. The writing is top notch, but it's Robert Holmes. I don't expect anything different, to be fair, from most of his scripts. It is the last great script that he wrote. The next two he wrote aren't his best. And I'll be honest with that. And it's nothing to do with the era. It's just the circumstances of him himself. But Robert Holmes does a cracking script here with cracking characters as always, and it's certainly worth the watch, guys, if you want to see a bit of classic Doctor Who that actually does work for the modern audience. This one certainly does. I'll go through all the characters, I'll go through the plot a little bit more, I'll go through some of the technical stuff as I always do. So we'll start off with the lead actor, the main man, Peter Davison, the Fifth Doctor. Now, this is Davison's finest performance. Unfortunately, it is his last. He has been said on camera that he wishes that Androzani was what he was getting from his second series, because his first series was okay in his eyes, but this is the character he wanted from the beginning, and he didn't get it to the end, which is a shame. The celery is explained in this story as well, and it's a gobbledygook kerfuffle, but Davison plays it well. He's got the heroic nature of the Doctor. He's there to save somebody he barely knows at the end of the day in Peri, and I'll come to Peri in a minute, and Nicola Bryant's performance. This is only her first proper story as a proper companion. But Davison plays the role well, plays it with aplomb, very good hero. There is only one thing with him, and it's to save Peri, make sure he gets the cure, and all the other things that happen in between are just inconveniences to him. And the heroicism of this Doctor at this stage just shows how good a character the Fifth Doctor could have been if he had that role a bit more. I mean, I love the Fifth Doctor anyway. I'm not saying he's a rubbish character. He is one of my favourite Doctors, as you probably see from the list up there, my favourite Doctors in 2018 that I did. But if I'm honest with you, it shows a different side to this character you don't really get. It's he's always a young dashing hero, maybe slightly uncertain of himself, but this one, he shows there is the steel there that the other Doctors had before him, and it's just a shame it is the last story. Shame as well, it's the only story where he works with Peri on a proper basis. I think the two of them work well together. Nicola Bryant is finding her feet still. There is a couple of slip-ups near the beginning where her American accent does slip. She goes a little bit more anglicised in a couple of the wordings, but overall, she's got an interesting role to play. It's very damsel in distress, but at the end of the day, she's getting steadily more ill with the spectral toxemia, and Nicola Bryant does play it well. She always seems to play distress quite well when she does do it on screen in Doctor Who, apart from Time Lash, but that's a different review altogether. But when she is playing serious parts to the role, she does play it with great aplomb, and she is a good actress. the way she plays an ill person, when she's getting steadily worse, is really good as well. I do like the way that she's done. One little point I did like is the fact that obviously there is that kind of delirium there at one point, because the Doctor uses a celery stick to try and help her. He does explain how it works for him, but tried to stimulate her and get her awake. She wakes up a minute, she says, "Hello, Doctor," and then she says, "Goodbye, Doctor," because she's fading, basically. It's really quite cool to see that. The two main characters are great, but they are sidelines, really. It is Doctor Who, but the main conflict is really between two of the main guest characters, Christopher Gable's Sharish Jack and John Normington's Morbus. I don't know if there's Huntington in my thing there. John Normington's Morbus. Now, these two are probably the key parts of the story. They are the drivers of the story. Stotts, the gunrunner who does the weapons running for him, he's employed by Morgus, as I said already. Morgus, not Morbus. I said Morbus there, I know, Morgus. Run by that, and you've got General Martin Cochrane playing General Chelak as well. But the two interplay between Gable and Morgus is shown on screen with some of the camera work as well, because there's definitely a rivalry. You can see there's a rivalry, and the two actors play it brilliantly between them. Christopher Gable's more of an unhinged character. Obviously, he's been hurt very badly from Morgus, because it's Morgus that effectively threw him into a mud flow in the caves on Androzani Minor and disfigured him till that's why he's wearing this mask in the story. And Morgus is a very controlled, villainous corporate type, very self-interested in what he wants, and he's very selfish in his gains and aims, and you can see that in the story. You can see that in the way the whole thing works. And then you've got, as I say, the other main guest characters. You've got Robert Glenister, plays Salatine, who is playing not just the Major in the android form that Jet creates, but also the Major in real life. The real Salatine is imprisoned with Jack. The android one's out there on the field, so it's been really interesting seeing him playing two different versions. You've got the more lighter tone, and then you've got the more robotic tone. And Glenister, when I've seen him on other things, is always quite good in that kind of more nuanced performance of a kind of more straight-laced thing. He's very good in that in Hustle, when he does the series Hustle in the noughties. You've then got Maurice Rose, who plays Stotts, and what a brilliant sadistic character. I mean, the classic series has times where you can show set pieces of a character's motives and flaws and what he thinks and his character overall. And Stotts has one of the best scenes in the story, showing his ruthlessness. And one of his underlings basically wants to get more Spectrots, because they failed getting the Spectrots they were told to get through the guns because they lost the weapons. And there's a scene where Stotts pulls out this pill that looks like a cyanide pill and stuffs it in the mouth of his companion, his team, and forces him to the edge of a cliff and gets him to try and bite it down. And that kind of the tension in that scene, the way it's filmed, and I'll come back to that in a minute, shows the character of Stotts and how ruthless he can be. And it's shown later on, because Stotts will then, at the end with the fight, the climax with Morgus and Jack, Morgus gets killed by Jack by putting Morgus's head goes in. I think it's a machine for refining Spectrox, I believe, and Morgus gets his head kicked and then dies, and then as soon as Jack's finished, he gets shot by Stotts at the door, and then Stotts gets shot by the android of Salatine. But it just shows the ruthlessness there of Stotts, and it's a really great character that's played there, and it's interesting seeing that. And then you've got, obviously, Chelak, played by Cochrane. Okay character. He's there as a general. He's there as the foil general, military type. Obviously, in this stage with Doctor Who, military types are seen with a little bit more disdain at times. But overall, I mean, it's a good little character piece, and it really works well with the production. Grain Harper, this is his first directorial debut in Doctor Who. He is the only director from Classic Who that went on to direct in New Who, Modern Who, and this is his first official outing. He did get involved with other filming things for other stories earlier in classic Doctor Who, but this is the first official one with him as a director credit. And the single camera work was fantastic. It really gives the scene, it really gives an air of you know, pace at times. Because it was very multi-camera at that point, still was for all the classic series. But what he does is at the first scene when you're trying to establish Jack's base, you've got this camera roving through the space, going from what's it, kind of cupboard thing through around the floor. You've got the hand of Jack coming up near the end, and then you've got him panning up to the monitors that show all the androids and all the armies and that on there. Very basic BBC Micro stuff, but still the effect is there. And that sort of single camera work does go through in some other elements as well. I've mentioned the scene about I mentioned the anthrax or the arsenic scene effectively with Stotts and his underling. That's another version of the single camera. There's a lot of action there. He utilises the filming with single camera a lot better than he does in the studio. He didn't have much time in the studio. He did manage to get one block, I think, in single camera, and he fell so behind he had to be forced to do multi-camera. But even with the multi-camera, he has still managed to get shots you wouldn't necessarily see. There's quite a few low-down shots at times with some of the stuff that's happening. When you do have scenes with Perry not being very well on the table and the Doctor coming in with Jack and everything, most of the shots in Jack's place are low down, so it's kind of like a kind of oppressive feel to it. There is a bit of camera work, and very clever camera work with the screen that happens, communication screen in Morgus's office, especially when Chellick comes up. You get one view from back of Morgus's head, describing, you know, have the conversation, and when it flips to the other side and seeing the back of Chellick's head, you see the back of his head and the screen, and then Morgus in the background. It's quite clever. Clever way of doing it, and I do like the camera work and the technique, and it's very modern in some of its feel, and that's why it would stand up now to watch for somebody who's used to New Who and the way the techniques are. There's a lot of elements you can see in there from that. This is Robert Holmes's last great scripts. Now, Robert Holmes hadn't done anything in Doctor Who for about 7-8 years. He hadn't written anything. Eric Saywood, the script editor, had coaxed him back to write the story, and as always, Robert Holmes is very good at doing not just the main characters, although they are more sidelined here, but also having, you know, guest cast that have a big story to them, a big characterization. And there's also sides here, and I'll go back to Harper's bit in a minute. There's also a couple of asides in the beginning where Morgus is giving an aside to camera like it's a theatre performance about his thoughts and feelings about what's happening in front of him. And that's really interesting, seeing that sort of theatrical look on the screen at that time. There's lots of elements here that I can't really go into without justifying a 20-30 minute video. I'm not going to do that here because these reviews don't go that long, but there's so much we could talk about with other people and discuss, and it's one of these stories I want to get in camera with somebody else and discuss in a bit more depth, because it's really such a fascinating story with discussion and everything else. And the music is complemented by Roger Lim's score. Now, I'm not a great fan of Lim's stuff because it's very, very, very synth, and it's very heavy synth, and it's very 80s in that respect. But Lim uses it as to punctuate stuff. It's like a background in this side. There's not big musical pieces like he has in Arc of Infinity, or I think it's Frontiers he does as well. And this one, he has effectively done it as a kind of ambient sound in the background. There's a constant drone going on near the end as things start getting worse for the Doctor and the companions, and this drone starts building up at the end. That's constantly there. This kind of monk's chant drone that goes on that builds up the tension to the end, and it's just fabulous music. It's just a fabulous story. There are some odd bits. There is the element of the mud monster. There is going to be the lava monster. There is always going to be one that's a bit thingy. Some of the production stuff is good for the time, but you can see it's glass plates to shot stuff. I mean, the story itself, I think, probably could have been a little bit tighter, but it's still, for 4 episodes, is brilliant. I mean, each episode has a decent cliffhanger. The first one is the shots, the Doctor and Perry getting shot. The second one is the lava monster creeping up on the Doctor. That's maybe not so much of a good one. And then the third one is the famous scene where the Doctor's trying to get back to Minor on the spaceship, and is trying to do manual control, and it's going out of control, and you can see this madness in the Doctor's eyes and determination to get back to Minor, and you see You Can't Stop Me Now, and it's a great story. It's really enjoyable, and it's really good, and it really does stand up to scrutiny. There is weakness, and no classic Doctor Who story is completely perfect, but this definitely shows why it is one of the most popular stories of the classic era. It's just a fantastic and fascinating thing that we've got with this story, and it's disappointing in one respect, because it so shows how good a character the Fifth Doctor could have been if he had those elements and that kind of jeopardy more. He was a very reactive Doctor. I enjoyed the character, but a very reactive Doctor, and just this little level that came up on the last story, it would have shown so much more to the Fifth Doctor, and it probably would have put him higher in most people's things as well if they'd seen that. But overall, I do really enjoy the story. I recommend you watch it if you get a chance. And I really do recommend you do see it, because if you have to see Classic Who, this is one of the ones I would definitely recommend watching. Overall, TARDIS is out of 5. I was going to put 4.5, but after talking about it, even though Happy's Patrol is one of my favourite stories ever, ooh, yeah, okay, right, yeah, I'll do 4.5 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5. It was very difficult there whether I was going to do 5 or 4.5, but I'm going to do 4.5 out of 5 for the story. And yeah, I would recommend, seriously, if you get a chance, to watch it, because it's a brilliant story. Let's have a look and see how that sits within the rest of the reviews so far. As you can see here, it's one of 4.5 out of 5 TARDISes I've reviewed so far. Caves of Androzani is the latest 4.5, hence the reason it is joint first place, but 4th in the list. It sits above The Visitation and The Green Death, both very good stories as well. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this review, don't forget to check out all the other reviews I've done so far, including another Davison story, The Visitation. It was the very first one I did. If you like what you see, don't forget to like the video, share it. Don't forget to hit the hashtag teamstructor if you do share it, just so we can promote it all. Check out all the social media links as always. Comment down below what your thoughts are of Caves of Androzani. Tell me what your thoughts are and what your likes are. Do you agree? Do you disagree with what I'm saying? And also, there's a new video every Sunday at 4 PM GMT. Next week is a Kidstructor. I hope you can join me for that. And until next time, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you later.